Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today I am excited to do my initial analysis on Project Silver Star, or actually I mean Donkey Kong Bananza. This game has finally been revealed. This 3D Donkey Kong game we've been theorizing on for so many years is here. It's coming out early on for the Switch 2 generation, July 17th. Every time I look at this trailer, I get goosebumps. I am so excited, so happy. This game is finally coming. It's been a long time coming, and Donkey Kong looks better than ever before. So today what we're going to be doing is a trailer analysis and also a look into the different things we've seen from the Treehouse as well. There are a variety of secrets about this game that I think we now have a much better understanding of, and that's what I want to dive into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches on June 5th. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit that notification bell. So first I would like to talk about what I mean by calling this game Project Silver Star. So for those that don't know, a 3D Donkey Kong game has been rumored for many years throughout the entire Switch era. We had gotten reports that Nintendo and Activision were working together on an open-world Donkey Kong project in 2016. This is being developed by Vicarious Visions, but very early on into the project, Activision pulled out. However, Nintendo and the father of Donkey Kong, Shigeru Miyamoto, really liked what they saw, and so the speculation that arose from those reports is that Nintendo went on to work on their own Donkey Kong project after what they saw with that one. And then a year or so into the generation for Switch 1, there were rumors, after the release for Mario Odyssey, that the Mario Odyssey team was now working on a Donkey Kong project. And there was some debate about whether it would be a 2D game or a 3D game. A lot of people chose to stay on the safe side and just call it a 2D game. But when considering the reports of the open world Donkey Kong project from Vicarious Visions, I thought it made more sense to think that maybe Nintendo, especially with the Mario Odyssey team, would want to work on a 3D Donkey Kong project after so many long years. And then later into the Switch generation, we heard about how Nintendo wants to bring Donkey Kong back to prominence, and we saw the Super Mario movie, which had a new design for Donkey Kong, which calls back a little bit to some of his retro designs. But then also, the first expansion to Super Nintendo World is a Donkey Kong Park. And we've even recently seen the release for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Nintendo has made it clear that they have big plans for Donkey Kong, and we thought that they might amount to something, especially after seeing the new design for Donkey Kong in the latest Mario Kart back in January. Everything seemingly was lining up for a new Donkey Kong announcement early on into the Switch 2 generation. But as for why I refer to this game as Project Silver Star, last year there were a variety of leaks of different codenames for different Nintendo projects from the user Midori, who many consider to be kind of a shady person, but in terms of their leaks, they are one of the most reliable. And some of those codename leaks have already been confirmed. We got Super Mario Party Jamboree and Echoes of Wisdom, but there were others, including a project known as Silver Star. And at the time, Midori said that they were unsure what was going on with this project. However, what we do know is that Super Mario Odyssey had the codename of Red Star. And Mario games, when it comes to the codenames, have red to depict that it's a Mario game. But the star part was a reference to Odyssey. And so when we look at Silver Star, it's clearly some type of Odyssey game. That was the speculation at the time, that's what I theorized. But the silver part suggested it might have something to do that isn't Mario. And so I thought, maybe the silver is a reference to Donkey Kong, because Super Donkey Kong is silver, and Donkey Kong's also a gorilla, and a popular gorilla is the silverback gorilla. And so maybe if the rumors are true, and Nintendo did decide to bring Donkey Kong in-house because they really want to bring Donkey Kong back to prominence, and they had at least some part of the Mario Odyssey team work on it, they would decide to call this project Silver Star until officially announced as what we now know it as Donkey Kong Bananza. And so I feel very confident that this theory has essentially been proven totally true, and we are now looking at what Silver Star is. And now let's get into the trailer analysis here. So looking right here, very first shot, there are several points of interest. Notice the variety of golden bananas. This is an environment with golden bananas. However, there also appears to be a very jungle, viney-like look here. We can even see these giant snake-like structures all around. There is these big structure in the background. They almost look like giant eggs. Perhaps this is like this hole here with the 3 little digits could be perhaps like the shape of a claw or a foot. Notice a cracked egg over here. And so actually, maybe these aren't even snakes, but rather ostriches, perhaps. We'll talk more about that later. We see a character over here. At first, I thought maybe an enemy, but I'm not so sure it's an enemy. It actually looks pretty friendly. It has these interesting eyes. Maybe eyes look somewhat like kind of like Cappy from Mario Odyssey, perhaps. There's also a spiky enemy over here, but continuing. There's another enemy here that's actually like beeping. There's like an antenna that's beeping. Perhaps it's like a bomb, like a time bomb that can explode. That might be. I think we see, yeah, one about to blow up there, perhaps. Or that might be a geyser of some kind. Here we see an entirely different environment. We still have those golden bananas all around. And we see a minecart over here. That's very interesting. Very much like prior Donkey Kong games where there were minecart sections. There's also this other character that looks kind of like a giraffe, but a stone-like structure representing a giraffe. Yet at the bottom we see the eyes and the little legs. And then over here there's another character. You see the eyes just open up, but he's shaped like a house, which is also quite curious. Continuing through, we see an ice environment. Nothing too crazy there, although here we see some sprawling green hills with a giant banana mountain over there, which looks pretty cool. Now here we see Ingot Isle. This is going to be the first main area of the game. Here we see what's from the opening section of the game, and it's a whole bunch of different monkeys in a mining facility, and there's even red girders, which is clearly a reference to the original Donkey Kong, which is super cool. And then who's smashing through? Our hero for this story, this game, Donkey Kong himself, sporting the new design with some really amazing expressions. Notice that cool smile as he comes in, and then it closes, he looks around, then he has his eyebrow raised. There's just so much attention to detail when it comes to the facial expressions. This design for Donkey Kong I actually really like. It shows an emphasis on his strength, though he's very Hulk-like, but he also has a lot of endearing emotions and expressions on his face. So I think there's a really nice balance that they've struck here with this design, and we'll touch on it more throughout this trailer and then some. But here we see him running around with his purple friend on his shoulder. That we actually see them meeting during the treehouse. He seems to be very scared of monkeys for some reason, even though technically Donkey Kong is a gorilla, not a monkey. Here we see Donkey Kong make another really cool facial expression. He seems to be very intrigued by this gold something he sees in this crystal here, probably relating to the golden bananas. And now he's smiling fiercely at it as he now knows for sure what it is. And so I love the facial expressions. There's so much detail there. Running around excitedly but strongly. And here's that enemy or character we saw earlier. And as we approach him or her, we see that they turn into a question mark. So this is probably a character we can ask questions on and what's going on in this environment. And so this environment may not be a threatening environment actually. Notice that there are a variety of different giraffe-like characters off into the background, and there might be something to that. But also over here, we see another character that's green, and there's like a green part to this sign here of this building. I believe this is a shop of some kind, and notice the balloon, which reminds me of the balloon items from prior Donkey Kong Country games. So very interesting. Also here we see Donkey Kong climbing up this mountain, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom style, which I also find to be very cool. But also notice there are all these giant giraffe-like structures off into the background. So there's the same environment with those giraffe creatures or giraffe rock creatures. But also notice that there's like smoke coming from all of them. So there may be a lot of factories here that are mining all the material that everyone's sort of acquiring in all these different underground areas, which we'll speak more on in a moment. Here we see Donkey Kong exploring more. Notice how he rolls into a jump, into a rock climb. And so there is clearly some similarities to Mario Odyssey here in the sense that there's a lot of platforming mechanics that flow into each other and they combo off of each other, creating a great deal of different possibilities, which ultimately makes exploring these vast open environments all the more exciting. And you're going to continue to experiment and find more different things to do, especially with what else Donkey Kong can do, which adds a whole other incredible layer that I will even go as far as saying is innovative and also mind-blowing. He dives straight down, fist first, through the ground, and then punches his way out the other side. So the environments are totally destructible. You can pull out platforms, use them as weapons to destroy other things. From what we see in the Treehouse, they actually talk about how everything in this game, or most things in this game, have a certain quality or classification of how tough they are. And so the game tells you this, and there are a lot of things that Donkey Kong can just smash through himself, and there's a great many other things that are too tough at first, and he has to rely on other things that he gathers to destroy those things. But ultimately, everything is destructible, including some of these rock characters here, which is hilarious. And so here we enter that grassy, jungly area with all the giant ostrich heads, and remember how we talked about how this guy can explode? Notice the antenna right here, he jumps. Donkey Kong rolls into him and knocks him into the spiky guy over here, which we would assume would hurt Donkey Kong if he just touched him by himself, and blows up his armor, and he's actually just totally done with that. So actually no, here we can see a golden skeleton. But yeah, so there's a lot of enemies that have like rock-like surfaces, but when we destroy them, they have these golden skeletons that almost look like perhaps the skeletons of crocodiles, or perhaps Kremlins from the Donkey Kong Country games, the original ones. Might be a reference there, possibly. And actually we see another one over here, and it looks like a giant crocodile head actually. And then you smash it, and then there is the Kremlin skeleton, or the golden Kremlin skeleton. Might be some sort of weird resurrection going on there. Here's another one. Donkey Kong blows it up with the blast material. And then we see Donkey Kong going down this entire tunnel. So basically in this game, this was confirmed during the Treehouse, that you're just going to be diving deeper and deeper into the world. There are different environments. In other words, to progress, you're just flying downwards, and you're going deeper and deeper into the earth. Notice this giant golden diamond banana here. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But here we see that Donkey Kong uses the terrain to slide around, so there's a little bit of a vehicle here. But also notice how we talked about this jungle environment, right? The green area. There are these ostrich-like structures, but there's also literally just ostrich people. One there, one there, one there. They seem to be docile. Here we see the return of barrel blasting, so that's another thing from Donkey Kong that has returned. Barrels are still a big part of this game. Also notice all the girders here, so still some more Donkey Kong references from the original. And on that note, there are also segments that are straight up like Donkey Kong Country side-scrolling sections. The trees look amazing, so there are going to be some detours in the different worlds, very much like Mario Odyssey actually, where you're exploring a world and you might enter a portal that takes you through like a linear section, and this appears to be something like that, but they're using this opportunity to sort of remind us of older Donkey Kong Country games, which I really appreciate. And here we see Donkey Kong riding the minecarts. Minecarts are still a big part of this game, still a big part of Donkey Kong, which is awesome. Here we see another interesting sort of thing going on here. So we see these friendly looking rock characters, right? But in front of them are these other things. Actually, some of them look like zebras, now that I look at it. Zebras with like crystal rock masks or costumes, or perhaps special weird zebra creatures. We did see the giraffe creatures earlier, so there could be a little bit of that. Although when I look here, yeah, I think these are zebra creatures, which is quite funny. So we're going to have different like jungle animals, ostriches, zebras, giraffes, although they may be variations of them in some cases where they're more rock-like as opposed to just totally normal like the ostriches are, which I guess aren't normal, but there's something to them, and I'll speak to that in a bit. But also here we see another Kong. This is a giant, ancient, old Kong. Notice his head has like rotten, spoiling bananas. But also there are these speakers here as well. I will say that at first I thought this was a statue, but when seeing the treehouse footage, there's actually an angle where we see him sort of breathing and moving a little bit more. So he is a living Kong on a throne of some kind here. And what's fascinating about this environment is that we see a whole bunch of cargo freights. That's super cool. What's going on with these rusted old cargo freights, and why is this Kong here on his throne with this spoiling bananas? And why are there speakers here? It's hard to say for sure. However, I will use this moment to speak on how the musical motif of Donkey Kong has returned as well. So when we see in the treehouse Donkey Kong meeting this purple character here, he has to sing to calm him down and build that relationship. So singing's still a very big part of the game. It's part of the gameplay as well. It helps you to find different items in the environment. It's like a hint system. Continuing here, we see Donkey Kong just getting super excited for bananas. So every time Donkey Kong runs into these giant golden crystal bananas, his tongue sticks out like this. Tons of expression. He's in love with the bananas. He's super hungry for them. It's hilarious. Here we see him meeting our purple friend. They're dancing around. Here we see what I believe is a boss fight. So this is a depiction of some kind of anglerfish. You'll notice that it has like that weird antenna with the light, except this light looks like a street light, so that may play into like some sort of stop and go game with the actual combat of this fight, I would assume. And there's even like a deep, dark depth to its mouth. We see like these weird triangles, which may be a reference to the anglerfish coming from deep in the ocean, except here, even though we're underground, it's a very bright area. Donkey Kong smashing through, looking awesome. And here's another ostrich. There's another one over there. But this one might be literally Espresso, because we see he has like a sporty looking outfit there. Espresso from the Donkey Kong Country games. And even if it's not Espresso here, I'm sure Espresso is in this game, since there are so many different ostriches. Notice this on this egg-shaped like actual house here. There seems to be several of them. So this is a village. This isn't like a enemy territory. So what's really exciting about this is that this suggests that there are going to be other villages in this game, and that this game is going to be not just about exploring environments with enemies and just destroying everything, but also places that are more lore building for the overall Donkey Kong world, which is super exciting. And here we see that Donkey Kong is greeting this ostrich who may be Espresso. Donkey Kong looking awesome here, then gushing over bananas. Here he's crushing a banana, very much how Mario would approach a moon somewhat, especially because once you acquire it, there's like this celebratory animation, very Mario-like. Another potential hint at this maybe being an Odyssey kind of game. And there we see everything getting sucked up, going underground. This is the opening segment of the game. We can see a lot of these rock crocodiles that may be housing Kremlin skeletons, and then also we see a few Kongs here, including what may be our main baddie, which is... well, we'll get to that in a moment. Here we see one of those Kongs, and this looks to be a giant boss fight, and so we see these different sort of croc-like statues combined, and this almost reminds me a little bit of like Mayan or Aztec sort of like design, which, by the way, there are a lot of temples that share a similar design in prior Donkey Kong games, so this is in some way a reference to that, but this is being controlled by these weird golden skeletons. And so, while there may be some reference to perhaps Kremlins here because they have a crocodile-like look, it's reference to other things here like an ancient culture. And it's a giant boss fight, which is super cool. I love giant boss fights. A 3D platformer like this definitely needs them, especially with the strength that Donkey Kong has this time around. Here we see the big bad stealing the different bananas, the 3, including the main big bad, which is a monkey. And by the way, what I find interesting is that this is like a creepy monkey, and likely the big bad. Our little sidekick is very scared of monkeys, even though Donkey Kong isn't a monkey per se. So it may be because of a run-in with this big bad over here. Here we see the void stick or something like that crash down. This blocks our progress down below. And what you'll notice is that in the treehouse footage, you can actually break these things down, and they almost look like arrows, just kind of suggesting to you that yes, you continue going downwards for progress. Here we see another boss fight, it appears, but this one looks a lot like the opening section of the game, so perhaps it's related. Another one of the Kongs, a part of the evil big bads. It looks like a perfume bottle, but as I look more carefully, I think it says void. So it might be related to the void sticks that stop us from progressing forwards. That's very interesting. And even here we see that there's like a shape of a V, so that may be a big thing to this, that they all have some sort of reference to V for void or also downwards at the same time. He has golden teeth, so he clearly is a lover of gold. That's probably why he stole the golden bananas. Donkey Kong smashing through, Donkey Kong Bananza. But we're not quite done yet. I've made references to different things you've also seen in the Treehouse as well as I went through the trailer. But after looking through the Treehouse, we've got a really good understanding of how this game plays, and it's quite insane, really. Like 90% of everything in the world, if not more so, is totally destructible. And the game keeps record of all the destruction. There's even like a 3D map that you can pan out and see. It's quite detailed. And that still also keeps record of all the destruction you've done throughout the map. So this is impressive. We are seeing nearly totally destructible environments here, and yet it keeps record of it all with a 3D map system. And yet with all that in mind, this game still looks visually impressive. Now sure, there are some rocks here and there that you pull out that look kind of simple, but if that's really the only main drawback to being able to do all these crazy things, I'm all for it. And with the movement we've seen of Donkey Kong, it's very fluid, there's so many different combinations. It's fantastic. We've even learned that with the face buttons, the way it works, the A button, the button to the right, is just for jumping, but X, Y, and B are used for hitting in different directions. So the top face button X is for hitting upwards, Y to left is for hitting around you, and then B is like your ground pound to hit downwards. So it makes a lot of sense, it's intuitive. And a common sentiment we've heard from different people talking about this game who've gotten a chance to play this game already is that this game feels like a Mario Odyssey sequel. And given what we've been theorizing how this is being made by the Mario Odyssey team, if true, well, it makes a lot of sense. Even looking at the UI elements, they are very similar, and when Donkey Kong collects a triple banana, it's like when Mario collected a moon in Mario Odyssey. A very, very similar framework here. And the way Donkey Kong moves around, those free-flowing platforming abilities, while different and clearly more in tune with what Donkey Kong would be, more burly and strong, it has a flow to it somewhat similar to Mario Odyssey. And so yes, in some ways we could sort of look at Donkey Kong Bananza as a sequel to Mario Odyssey. Mario Odyssey also had a lot of references to Donkey Kong, so this almost feels like a natural sequel of some kinds, although it's starring a different character with a totally different setting. Now, what does this mean for 3D Mario? Well, I'll be talking about that very soon in another video. What I would like to end this analysis on, though, is just how this game still stays true to Donkey Kong. I understand that many people who are fans of all the different Rare Donkey Kong games, Rare the company, the developer, they created a lot for Donkey Kong. A lot of what we know Donkey Kong as today came from Rare. But as I mentioned earlier, there's already a little bit of that still there. We see that you can still minecart around, you still have barrel blasting, we've seen Espresso the Ostrich, but there's actually even more than that. In one of the Treehouse levels, we can find Cranky Kong. So Cranky Kong is back, and during the conversations with Cranky Kong, he makes reference to Rambi as well. So it looks like Rambi's gonna be in this game. And if Espresso's in this game, if Rambi's in this game, if Cranky Kong's in this game, I think it then becomes reasonable to think that there will be other Donkey Kong characters in this game as well, many of which came into play during the different Rare-made Donkey Kong games. And one particular character that I'm still looking for is Diddy Kong. But because we do have Cranky and Rambi and Espresso, I feel very confident in saying that Diddy Kong is also going to appear. And something exciting about this game is that I think we're going to get a much better realization of the Donkey Kong world. I made mention earlier that there are different villages. We have a village of ostriches, for example, and we do get to see this dialogue from Cranky Kong making reference to their island. So maybe we're not exploring the Donkey Kong island this time around, but we are getting to see a more expanded look to the bigger Donkey Kong world. And as I mentioned earlier, there could be some subtle references to the Kremlins here given all these crocodile-looking like creatures. And so I look at Donkey Kong Bananza, and I feel like it's actually a celebration of the entire Donkey Kong history, going before Rare as well, with the original Donkey Kong references, with the new design of Donkey Kong himself that is reminiscent of his earlier designs. And I just find that he's so expressive, so endearing. This might be my favorite design of Donkey Kong yet, and I am so excited for Bananza. July 17th cannot come soon enough. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.